Do you know what 30 years of psychological practice have taught me? Women are brilliant at spotting inconsistencies in their boss, their best friend, or even the local politician. But the moment it comes to the man by their side, they suddenly become masters of self-deception. Today I want to share something with you that changed the life of Eleanor, one of my dearest patients. And that might also change yours if you have the courage to listen until the end. Because by the end of this video, you'll know the clinical secret I use to detect when someone is lying with their heart, even if their words sound like pure poetry. Eleanor came to see me on a Tuesday in November. She had been with Andres for 5 years, a man who told her over dinner, "You are the love of my life," while simultaneously tapping away on his phone. A man who hugged her at night, but for 2 years kept delaying moving in together because the timing wasn't right yet. Elena looked at me with those eyes I've seen 1,000 times, confused, hurt, but above all, full of hope that I would tell her she was mistaken, that everything was fine. He tells me he loves me. Every day. How could I doubt it? She said. And that was exactly the problem. Elena had confused words with actions, speech with reality, and this is the trap millions of intelligent women fall into every single day. You see, our brain is wired to create coherence where none exists. It's called confirmation bias. It's so powerful that we'll ignore 1,000 red warning signs just to cling to one single green light. Once that bias made sense, our ancestors needed to believe their partner would stay to protect their offspring. Today, in the 21st century, this mechanism is often our greatest emotional enemy. Do you know what I told Elena? Love is not explained, love is shown. And it's shown not through pretty words, but through daily choices, through real priorities, through how someone treats you when no one is watching. That afternoon, Eleanor left my office with a clear task. For 1 week, she was to observe Andres's actions without listening to his words, only the deeds. The results shook her deeply. But before I tell you what she discovered, I want you to understand something fundamental. Love without evidence is nothing more than wishful thinking disguised as romance. And wishful thinking, no matter how sweet it sounds, doesn't pay emotional bills, doesn't stand by you in hard times, and doesn't build a stable life with you. There's a sentence I repeat in my lectures, and that you should tattoo on your soul. If someone doesn't add value to your life, then add them to the recycling. Sounds harsh, doesn't it? But healthy love can afford that luxury, to be strict with those who hurt us, even if the pain comes wrapped in gift paper and a silk tie. Let's speak plainly. What is love really? No, please, no Alejandro Sanz songs, and no Paulo Coelho quotes. Love, from the perspective of neuroscience and cognitive psychology, is a state of deep attachment that shows up in concrete, measurable behavior. When someone truly loves you, their nervous system responds in specific ways every time they think of you, plan with you, or include you in their future. That's biology, not romantic fantasy. Dopamine molecules, MAOT, the messengers of pleasure and motivation, rise not only when we see the person we love, but also when we think about doing something for them. Do you see the difference? True love produces actions, not just feelings. It creates protective, involving, prioritizing behavior. If your partner doesn't consistently display those patterns, then his brain simply isn't truly in love, no matter how often he says, "I love you." I remember Carmen, another patient who left a deep mark on me. She had been married for 10 years to a man who constantly assured her how important she was to him, yet regularly cancelled their plans whenever something more important came up. Carmen had developed a remarkable ability to justify every rejection. He has so much work, his family needs him, he's stressed. One day I asked her, "Carmen, if your 15-year-old daughter had a boyfriend who treated her the way your husband treats you, what would you tell her?" She stayed silent for 5 minutes. Then she broke into tears. "I would tell her that boy doesn't love her." that she deserves better. Bingo. There was the answer she had suppressed for years. Do you know why we're so forgiving with those who supposedly love us? Because we confuse love with anxious attachment. We think loving means needing, excusing, settling for crumbs just to avoid being alone. But that isn't love. It's emotional dependency disguised as a romantic virtue. Healthy, sensible love, the kind I've been advocating for 30 years, has very clear qualities. It is reciprocal, consistent, constructive, free, and above all, obvious. It doesn't need defenders, creative interpretations, or mental gymnastics to make hurtful behavior look pretty. Let's get to the core, because I know you're here to recognize the signals your intuition has already felt, but your mind refuses to accept. We're talking about concrete, observable, undeniable behaviors. After her week of observation, Eleanor came back with a notebook full of notes. "I think I've been lying to myself for 5 years," she said. She had watched how Andres managed his time, what really mattered to him, how he treated her when he was tired or stressed, how he spoke about her, how he planned the future. The results were devastating and at the same time liberating. Andres told her, "I love you" every morning, yet while she shared about her day, he scrolled through Instagram. He called her the most important person in my life, but for 2 years had not introduced her to his parents because the time wasn't right yet. He promised, "We'll move in together soon," but every time Eleanor brought up the subject, he skillfully changed the topic or invented a new excuse. Does that sound familiar? It does to me. It's the story of thousands of women who've sat in my office over the years. Intelligent, successful, capable women who would never accept empty promises in their careers, yet in love settled for hollow words and plans that never materialized. There is something important you need to understand about the male brain, not as a crude generalization, but as a scientifically grounded fact. Men show love mainly through protective actions and shared projects. When a man is truly in love, it is his natural instinct to include that woman in every important area of his life, to plan a future together, to show her proudly, and to protect the relationship. If he doesn't do that on his own initiative, consistently, and as something natural, then his brain simply does not process the relationship as a true emotional priority. He may feel affection, convenience, maybe even a certain dependency, but love? That is something completely different. In my years of clinical practice, I have recognized very clear patterns that repeat over and over. Unmistakable behaviors that serve as reliable indicators of missing emotional interest, even when accompanied by the most romantic words. I will now show you 5 of the most important ones, signals that have proven to be sure harbingers of relationships destined either for failure or for endless suffering. First unmistakable signal: he loves you according to office hours. Have you noticed that his love runs on a fixed schedule? He is available when it suits him, disappears when he has other plans, and only seeks you out when he needs something or feels lonely. True love does not keep business hours. Take Marcos, for example. He called Sandra his princess, but only on weekends. From Monday to Friday, she hardly existed in his world. He worked, saw friends, pursued hobbies, and she played no role. On Fridays, he would show up with flowers and sweet words, as if he had been thinking of her all week. Sandra excused it as work stress, but the truth was simpler. For Marcos, she was a weekend girlfriend, not a central part of his life. When someone truly loves you, they think of you throughout the day. They send spontaneous messages, look for ways to include you in their everyday life, and share not only the special, but also the ordinary moments with you. True love is not erratic, it is constant. Its intensity may fluctuate, yes, but it doesn't simply vanish and reappear depending on mood. Do you know what Sandra realized when she applied this perspective? That she had been the weekend girlfriend of a man who lived the rest of the week as if he was single. And that, my dear, is not love. That is emotional convenience. Second unmistakable signal: his words and his priorities live on different planets. He says, you are the most important thing in his life, yet everything that concerns you is consistently postponed whenever another option comes along. Friends, work, family, even hobbies always take priority over your needs or your shared plans. Patricia, for instance, waited 4 years for Javier to keep his promises. "Next year we'll get married," he said every December. "As soon as I finish this project, I'll focus more on us," he repeated every 6 months. "Soon I'll introduce you to my family," he promised, every time Patricia brought up the subject. 4 years of soon that never came. 4 years in which next year kept turning into more waiting. The bitter truth of Patricia's story is that Javier actually believed his own promises. He wasn't a conscious manipulator, but a man who confused good intentions with real commitments. But good intentions without concrete actions are nothing more than self-deception disguised as love. The problem was that Patricia had learned to live in the future tense. When he does this, we'll be happy. When he changes that, everything will be better. When the right time comes, our relationship will be perfect. But true love lives in the present tense. I love you now. I prioritize you today. I build with you from the start. How many whens exist in your relationship? How often have you thought, when he matures, when he gets through this phase, when he realizes what he has in me? Every when is a postponement of your happiness. A polite way of telling yourself that your present doesn't matter, that your well-being can wait. Neuroplasticity shows us that the brain changes according to our patterns of thought and behavior. If your partner is constantly postponing you, his brain is literally training itself not to prioritize you. And over time, this becomes a neural wiring that is nearly impossible to change. Third signal, painful but liberating. You are more of a guest in his life than the main character. You know some of his friends, but not all. You have been to his apartment, but you don't have a key. You know about his plans, but you are not part of creating them. You are a part of his life, yes, but on the sidelines, not at the center. Claudia told me she had been with Roberto for 2 years, a man who assured her she was the love of his life. And yet Roberto led 2 lives, one with friends who knew Claudia and one with others who didn't know she existed. He had plans with her and plans without her. He showed himself in 2 versions, loving boyfriend by her side, practical single in the rest of his time. "He's just very reserved," Claudia defended him. "He doesn't like to mix friend groups." So I asked her a simple question. "Claudia, if you were truly the love of his life, wouldn't he be proud to introduce you to everyone? Wouldn't he want to include you in every part of his life?" Real love is integrative, not fragmented. Someone who is truly in love feels a natural urge to merge their life with the others, to introduce important people to one another, to make plans together, to connect worlds, not out of duty but out of joy, because it brings happiness when 2 lives flow together. If you feel that you only know one version of your partner and that other parts of his life remain off limits, not out of healthy privacy, but out of systematic separation, then that is not consideration. It is emotional exclusion disguised as healthy boundaries. In my couples therapy, I've repeatedly observed something fascinating. Truly loving couples gradually merge. Not in toxic dependency, but in natural integration. Friends become shared friends, families open up to each other, plans emerge organically together. It's as if real love has its own gravity, pulling all areas of life toward a shared center. If this integration doesn't happen after a reasonable amount of time, it usually means that one partner, or both, is not truly emotionally invested. And most of the time it's the one who keeps up the separation. Fourth signal, he loves you as long as everything goes well, but disappears emotionally in difficult moments. He is tender when you shine, but withdraws when you need support. He is romantic in good times, but critical or absent as soon as you go through hardship. Raquel had built a perfect image of her relationship with David. He was attentive, funny, passionate, as long as she was at her best. But when Raquel spent 6 months caring for her sick mother, David showed his true face. "You've been so stressed lately," he said whenever she needed comfort. "You should be more positive," he he suggested when she was exhausted. You're not the same anymore, he accused her, when she had no energy for his plans. David wasn't a bad person, but he wasn't a true emotional partner. He was a companion for the good times, a friend for fun, a lover for the easy phases. But real love shows itself precisely in the difficult moments, when there is nothing romantic or entertaining, when only the conscious decision remains to be there for each other. Mature love knows that life brings stress, illness, loss, family crises, financial struggles, and vulnerability. Someone who doesn't stand by you emotionally during those moments does not truly love you. They are simply enjoying your company when it's convenient. Have you noticed your partner's attitude change when you face problems? Does he become colder, more distant, more critical? Have you felt alone precisely at the times when you needed support most? Those are signs that his love depends on you always being in a certain emotional state. And that is not love, it is emotional consumption. A secure attachment style, the foundation of healthy love, shows itself in emotional consistency. People with secure attachment don't run from their partner's heavy feelings, they are not afraid of their partner's vulnerability, and they don't tie their affection to conditions. They are present, in good times and in bad. Not out of duty, but as a natural response of the heart. If your partner can only love you as long as you are the light version of yourself, then he does not love you fully. And you deserve someone who loves you, especially on your grey days, because those are the days when love truly proves itself. Fifth and final signal, the most painful, but also the most liberating. He talks to you about the future, but does nothing in the present to build it. He paints you a picture of a shared life, but makes no daily decisions that would make that life possible. He is a master of building castles in the air, but unable to place a single stone on the ground. Amparo listened to wonderful plans for 7 years. Rodrigo described the house they would buy, the trips they would take once they had more money, the children they would have once he was more stable at work, the wedding they would celebrate once things calmed down. 7 years of conditional futures that never materialized into a real present. The problem wasn't that Rodrigo lied consciously. The problem was that he confused fantasizing with planning, dreaming with building, wishing with deciding. Rodrigo enjoyed imagining a future with Amparo, but he wasn't willing to make the sacrifices and adjustments in the here and now that would have been necessary to make that future real. Do you know the difference between a shared dream and a joint life project? Projects have deadlines, budgets, concrete steps, interim decisions. Dreams consist only of pretty words and good intentions. If your partner talks a lot about the future but never makes decisions in the present that bring you closer to that future, then he is only using those plans to keep you hopeful, without truly committing. After 30 years of clinical experience, I have come to a clear conclusion. Love is measured by decisions, not explanations. It is measured by daily actions, not by extraordinary promises. It is measured by consistency over time, not by isolated moments of intensity. Is your partner really saving for the shared house? Is he adjusting his lifestyle, changing habits, rearranging priorities so that this future vision can become reality? If the answer is no, then those plans are nothing more than conversational entertainment, not real projects. I remember Teresa, a brilliant woman who came to me after 10 years of waiting. 10 years of one day we'll get married, one day we'll have kids, one day we'll move in together. When Teresa finally had enough and gave a clear ultimatum, he left her. Not because he was cruel, but because he never intended to keep those promises. They were only tools to keep the relationship going. Do you know what Teresa told me 2 years later? Walter took 10 years of my life, but he also gave me the most valuable lesson. Never again will I love someone for their potential, only for their reality in the present. That is the key, my dear listener. Love people for what they are today, not for what they might be tomorrow. Love their actions in the present, not their promises for later. Love their consistency, not their rare exceptions. But here comes the most important part of everything I've told you. Because it's one thing to recognize these signals, it's something else entirely to know what to do with that knowledge. When you realize that someone doesn't truly love you, even if he tells you so every day, a frightening question arises, and now the first reaction is usually denial. Surely I'm mistaken, maybe I'm being too harsh. I should give him more time. But denial doesn't change facts. It only hides them temporarily. Meanwhile, he keeps behaving exactly the same. Why should he change if you accept everything? Then comes what we call bargaining in psychology, negotiating with reality. If I change, maybe he'll change too. If I'm more patient, maybe he'll recognize my worth. If I show more love, maybe he'll respond the same way. But love is not a business transaction, and you cannot love for two. After that comes anger. And you know what? Anger is useful. It gives you energy, clarity, courage to act. But it must be intelligent anger, not destructive. Anger that drives you to protect yourself, not anger that seeks to hurt the other person. And finally, if you're lucky and you do the emotional work, you reach acceptance. Acceptance does not mean resignation, but clarity. Seeing things as they are, not as you wish them to be. Making decisions based on facts, not on hopes. Let's return to Elena, because her story has an ending you should know. After that week of pure observation, she came back having made her decision. She no longer wanted to be an accomplice to her own suffering. Either Andres would truly commit with concrete actions and clear timelines, or she would move on without him. Do you know what happened? Andres became angry. He felt pressured, misunderstood, cornered. Why can't you just enjoy what we have? Why do you have to complicate everything with your demands? He asked. And in that moment, Elena had absolute clarity. For Andres, love meant taking without giving, enjoying without commitment, having company without responsibility. Elena ended the relationship that same week. It wasn't easy because 5 years cannot simply be erased. But for the first time in a long time, she was at peace with herself. She stopped living in hope and began living in reality. And what happened afterwards? Elena discovered something beautiful. She had been so busy trying to keep a broken relationship alive that she had completely neglected other areas of her life. She picked up old hobbies again, deepened friendships, devoted herself to projects she had put off. 8 months later, she met Carlos. And from the very beginning, Carlos did naturally and effortlessly everything Elena had begged Andres for over 5 years. He included her in his life without her having to ask. He planned a future with her and immediately began to build it. He prioritized her so clearly that at first Elena felt overwhelmed. In our last session, she told me, "Now I understand the difference between someone who says they love you and someone who truly loves you. It's like the difference between theater and real life. This is the great revelation I promised you at the beginning. The clinical secret to knowing when someone is lying with their heart is very simple. Observe his decisions when he thinks no one is watching. Observe his priorities when he has to choose. Observe how he treats you when he is tired, stressed, or worried. Observe the place you occupy in his daily life, not in his romantic speeches. Real love is obvious. It doesn't need interpretation. It is consistent, not erratic. It integrates. It doesn't exclude. It lives in the present, not in a conditional tomorrow. It is unconditional, not dependent on your mood. And if you have to perform the impossible just to feel your partner's love, then you are probably not being loved the way you deserve. And here is something you must understand deeply. Realizing that someone does not love you as you deserve is not a tragedy. It is liberation. It is the door out of an emotional prison where you may have lived for years without noticing. It is the beginning of the possibility of finding someone who truly knows how to love. Because, my dear listener, you deserve to be loved in a clear, constant, integrative, present, and unconditional way. You deserve to be a priority, not an option. The main character, not a guest. To have plans that come true, not promises that vanish into nothing. And above all, you deserve someone who doesn't have to learn how to love you, because he can do it naturally from the very beginning. Letting go does not mean lovelessness, as I always say. Letting go is self-love. It is the courageous decision not to settle for crumbs when you deserve the whole feast. It is the wisdom to know that being honestly alone is better than being falsely accompanied. It is the emotional maturity to choose honest solitude over lying company. In these 30 years, I have seen brilliant women waste years, sometimes decades, waiting for men who could not love to finally mature, change, get it. Successful women in every area of their lives, except the most important one, their choice of partner. Why does this happen? Because we were taught that love means sacrifice, endless patience, unconditional devotion. But no one taught us that love also requires reciprocity, coherence, mutual respect. No one told us that love does not mean suffering. A healthy relationship should add joy to your life, not shrink it. The rational kind of love I defend follows clear rules. It must be reciprocal, constructive, obvious, and free. If your relationship does not meet these 4 basic criteria, then it is not love. It might be habit, dependency, fear of loneliness, or convenience, but not love. And now comes the moment of truth. After all these examples, after all these signals, what will you do with this information? Because information without action is just intellectual entertainment. You are not here to be entertained. You are here to change your life. My suggestion is concrete. Do exactly what Elena did for 1 week. 7 days of observation. Pay attention only to actions, not words. Look at how your partner organizes his time and what place you occupy in it. How he treats you when he is stressed. How he speaks about you. What plans he makes with you. And which ones without you. Write everything down in a notebook. No interpretations, no excuses, no explanations. Just facts. At the end, read your notes as if they were about a good friend. What would you advise her? And during that same week, observe yourself as well. Do you justify behaviors you would never accept in any other area of your life? Do you take emotional crumbs you would immediately reject in a friendship? Have you lowered your standards so far that you hardly remember what they once were? This self-evaluation is not to make you feel guilty, but to strengthen you. Because when you understand how you contributed to the dynamic, you also realize that you have the power to change it. You cannot control your partner's actions, but you can control your reactions and your decisions. I remember Lucia, a successful architect, who had spent 8 years in a relationship with a man for whom she was always the last priority. At work, she was relentless. A contractor who failed to deliver was immediately replaced. A supplier who didn't meet deadlines was switched. But in love, she had endless patience with emotional mediocrity. In my career, I tolerate no unprofessionalism, she said. Why do I tolerate a lack of commitment in my private life? That question changed her life. Lucia decided to merge her 2 versions, the tough professional and the lenient partner, into a single, coherent woman. When she began to apply her professional standards to her personal life, Tomas felt pressured. You've become too demanding. You used to be more relaxed. But Lucia was no longer willing to be relaxed with someone who had never been relaxed with her. It was either serious commitment, or she would move on. Tomas stayed mediocre. Lucia chose to remain extraordinary. 6 months later, she was in the best relationship of her life, with a man who valued her as much as she valued herself. The truth is simple. You teach people how they are allowed to treat you, not through your words, but through what you accept. If you accept empty promises, you will keep getting empty promises. If you accept being the last priority, you will continue to stand at the back. If you accept emotional crumbs, you will keep getting crumbs. But if you change your standards, if you stop accepting the unacceptable, if you set clear boundaries and hold them, one of 2 things will happen. Either your partner grows with you, or he stays where he is, and you find someone who is already at your level. In both cases, you win. Because the worst scenario is not being alone. The worst scenario is being badly accompanied. The worst scenario is not temporary emptiness, but permanent false fullness. There is a huge difference between being alone and feeling lonely. You can lie next to someone physically and still feel abandoned inside. Chosen solitude is strength. Forced solitude is victimhood. If you remain alone because no one deserves your company, then you are in control of your life. If you stay in a false relationship out of fear of being alone, you hand over control of your happiness to someone who doesn't know what to do with it. And right here, my dear listener, lies the greatest test. Having the courage to look truth in the eye and act accordingly. Not clinging to maybe and someday, but deciding clearly what life you truly want to live. Because in the end, it is not the fear of being alone that paralyzes you. It is the fear of recognizing your own greatness and living by it. Once you take that step, you realize solitude is not an enemy, but a space where you can rediscover yourself. That is why the essence of my 30 years of experience is this. Love should help you grow, not diminish you. Love should strengthen you, not weaken you. If today you find the courage to place actions above words, to define your standards clearly, and to stop settling for less, you will open the door to a relationship that truly deserves to be called love. The first step is simple, 7 days of honest observation. The next step is harder, consistency, but believe me, beyond that lies not emptiness, but freedom. And freedom is always the first ground on which true love can flourish.